This is so wonderful. Thank you so much for asking me. When I looked at the list of people who I was reading with, I legit had this, like I had a moment of just feeling incredibly starstruck. Um, uh, so I'm gonna read some poems that are from much later in the same project that the work in the book is from. It's a project called Anne Elizabeth, and it's about Elizabeth Bishop, transmasculine memoir, authorship, and the idea of accuracy. And it also cribs from a bunch of memoirs by trans men. Also, the letters of Robert Lowell and Elizabeth Hardwick. Also, a book called Dancing the Dialectic, which is an autobiography by Rupert Raj, who is this kind of like obscure Canadian, somewhat obscure Canadian, but not inconsequential Canadian trans activist. So I like to give Rupert some love. You should look him up. He's a really interesting person. And then also a book about cryptozoology that's called Alien Animals, that's by Janet and Colin Ward, who are a couple who live in England and research Bigfoot. Okay, so this poem is called Elizabeth and His Fisherman's Cap. During my time in Toronto, I also met some cisgender queer folks, including Elizabeth, a young poet, artist, and actor. I decided I would make a record of Elizabeth and any events that happened regarding her. He presented as somewhat androgynous and also drew pictures of intersex flowers, sprouting both pistils and stamens, which he exhibited in art shows. You won't mind my saying something personal, Mr. Elizabeth. You're a mystic, I can always tell. For the first time, I felt that I belonged. I was part of an intentional community of gay men, lesbians, and transsexuals. If you go to Nova Scotia this fall, you won't be able to shake me. Me in my black leather jacket and white corduroy fisherman's cap, and her in her fake leopard skin jacket and heels, strolling down Bank Street holding hands and feeling good. I heard Elizabeth read, pretty thin stuff, though not unattractive personally. He remembers your work before the war as having more address than some woman whose name he can't recall. Our romance was short-lived because the chemistry just wasn't there, but we remained friends for several years afterwards. Okay, this one's called Activist Elizabeth. Around this time, my activist gene was stirring, so I decided to educate the world about transsexuals. I am waiting for them to come in dreams. A first draft one night, uncanny revisions the next two. I called CFRA Radio to see if they wanted to feature me, and we pre-taped an interview. Usury has made us. I can hear Elizabeth muttering out a review to prove that our biases are identical. Perhaps I should have conceded, yet I wanted it to have the right build-up. Disconcertingly, neither newspaper would print my advertisement in the Seeking Friends section. Well, I didn't say anything then. And of course, the Elizabeth in-laws weren't the right stage setting. And then there was that poetry conference. And I remember one evening presided over by Elizabeth, and my Elizabeth was there. And going home to the poet's dormitory, I was so drunk that my hands turned cold, and I felt half dying and held your hand. I drafted a proposal to support pre-transitional trans men still in female physical form, whether in prison or a halfway house. I want you to know that you need never again fear my overstepping myself and stirring up confusion with you. I remember this place before you came. This poem is called Happier, Elizabeth. People seem to think that doing something like writing a poem makes one happier in life. To make such a claim about Elizabeth's work, however, is to displace truth from its relation to literality. Who can doubt that Elizabeth really lives in her books? If she ever loses her mind, she'll never know which parts of her life she lived and which she wrote. I can't judge really, because I find it so touching that he should now, after 25 years, be painfully living through his old work again, questioning not only the style, but the experience. We all have regrets. In late 2016, I opted to donate the unpublished manuscript to the Transgender Archives. The critics, for the most part, have refrained from seriously reading Elizabeth's readings of reading. They have cited her work, indeed, as exemplary of precise observation and accurate detail, presenting us with an Elizabeth who seems startlingly like some latter-day newspaper item. A woman in a remote state went to the hospital and turned into a man. I'm ready for my revenge. This one is called Almost Unintelligibly Sensitive Elizabeth. That's something Robert Lowell said about Elizabeth Bishop once. He said that she was almost unintelligibly sensitive to public exposure, which just means he didn't understand what was going on. Okay. Almost unintelligibly sensitive Elizabeth. We are poor passing facts, and warned by that, as I have said, to make our living wills. The trouble is the letters make the book, I think, I said in a fit of vertigo, as a rake hit me in the face. At least they make Elizabeth real beyond my invention, I said, stepping on another rake, in another world. I attribute things to Elizabeth I made up, or that were said by someone else. I am peculiarly, almost unintelligibly sensitive to public exposure. There are no grounds to support a disciplinary complaint against the physicians concerned. Try and take a photograph, and also try speaking to it. No one has tried this yet. Ask it where it came from and what it wants. Okay, I'm gonna do two more. That last one was a really savage, Robert Lowell just took Robert Lowell to the ground. Thanks, guys. Okay, this is called Preoccupied List. A man driving near Olmedo, Texas on the 18th of January saw a cat or monkey-faced bird 4 to 5 feet tall with wings extended 6 feet on either side. And on the same day, Elizabeth saw a 4-foot bird with a 4 to 6 inch beak standing beside an irrigation canal in San Benito, Texas. These were both you in some transformation or dream. Undaunted, that July, I complained to CAMH's Adult Gender Identity Clinic. Elizabeth claimed to have been attacked by a dark, bat-winged, red-eyed bird, but since there are doubtful features to his story, we will spend no more time on it. We will move quickly to San Antonio, Texas, where a possible pteranodon was sighted on the 24th of February. Dr. Elizabeth sympathized, urging me to file a formal complaint with the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. I could see the skeleton of this bird through the skin or feathers. It stood out black against the background of the gray. The process was psychologically triggering, as I had to record all events and my negative reactions. The birds could have escaped from private aviaries, but no one's here. There is an undue preoccupation with greatness, almost a sense of mission in making a new contribution. He wanted to be a second Elizabeth and actually thought he could be. But then, this constant psychic sabotage explains why so few photographs of Elizabeth exist. Researchers must consider themselves fortunate that they have any at all. Okay, one last one. This is a climactic poem, because in this poem, I say a name that's not Elizabeth. Get ready. Okay, this poem's called Stephen and Elizabeth. Just before waking up, I dreamed I was Stephen, and I was reciting, "In the beautiful morning, a beautiful poem fell to the ground from the beautiful lips of the poet." Or I was pretending to be Stephen. It seemed to be very funny at the time. My revenge, like all revenge, is arbitrary because my conditions are arbitrary. Revenge is not structural, though produced and determined by structure, and I would never wish anyone to mistake my little book for anything but an act of revenge. The transphobia of my period produced in me certain sense of resentments, mostly of the unrhetorical. Whatever ideas emerge have not been arrived at over a period of time, but perceived, as it would seem, in passing. More than I longed for you, I long to write that way. Excuse this image, it comes from bathing suits on the line, our machine which became overloaded and stopped, from looking at pictures of Elizabeth, and from the heat. It is almost 100 in the shade today. I only said my name because she said it. I only have a name because of her. Thank you very much. Really wonderful to read, especially with my Iowa sister, Cam, I love you. Thank you so much, guys.